We're in our fourth week now, and I hope things are starting to click for you. If you haven't taken a look at the calendar for this week, make sure you do that. Also, I posted a learning guide that kind of shows what's coming up next. We are looking at doing a test sometime next week, probably closer to Thursday and Friday. So please start working on the study guide this week. So if you're following the calendar, you should probably be good to go. All right, so we're going to talk about ancient China right now. This is the civilization that I'm going to model and teach for you. We're going to do this in two parts. The first part, I'm going to talk about geography, religion, and social structure. So the second part will have cities, writing, arts, government, etc. So this is only part one of two parts. So I'm going to talk about ancient China in general because ancient China is influenced by a set of beliefs and geography and other features. But the Qin dynasty, I'm going to kind of narrow in on that, which is very unique. So China is one of the world's oldest civilizations. It dates back more than 6,000 years. China today is only around 50 years old, but the civilization itself, the landmass, the people, are over 6,000 years old. I got a chance to visit China in 2010 with Hill Murray. As you'll see my brother jumping up. This was at the Emperor's Palace, or one of the many palaces of the nobility. So you can see the structures are super large. It's almost like larger than life. And that's exactly what they wanted you to feel when you arrived there, was kind of like larger than life. This is our tour guide, Daniel. He was awesome. He taught us a lot about China and its history, but there were certain topics that we couldn't talk about, like Tiananmen Square. He avoided those and anything that would talk negatively about the Communist Party, the current Communist Party. We visited the Terracotta Army Museum, which was a mausoleum, a place to put the dead body of Emperor Qin Shi Huangdi. There's over 8,000 soldiers and other statues of people. Each one is unique, but they were made to accompany Qin Shi Huangdi in the afterlife. So a huge, expensive project back in the day. I'm going to show you a picture of myself next to the terracotta warriors as well as my brother. If I could, I would totally redo this photo, but unfortunately, I can't. The wall, the Great Wall of China that you are probably familiar with, is very long. And during the Qin dynasty, it was just starting to be built. Slaves had to work on the wall, and the slaves were often people that they had captured in war or were sold by family. Very sad, but oftentimes if a slave would die, they would just put their body in the wall. The wall definitely didn't look like this back in the day. It was a lot smaller. This is an interesting picture of what a classroom looked like in China. Now, this is a classroom that the tour knew that we were going to go in, so it was, acceptable to show Americans this classroom. Now, what I found fascinating, and maybe you saw this, but they have a camera in the classroom. So I thought that was a little cultural shock for me. Okay, Qin Dynasty. I'm going to be pretty brief with this as much as possible so that this video isn't too long. You are welcome to look at the PowerPoint and take your time to fill out your civilization study guide. Like I said before, there's only 3 things we're covering today in regards to the civilization features. All right, geography. Okay, we always look at how does the geography, physical features impact the development of a civilization. So for the Chinese, they had several rivers. As you can see, the Yangtze and Yellow River are most prominent on the coast. And that was a very rich river valley that had great conditions for growing China's main staple crop, which is rice. Only 10% of China is farmable, but they do have a lot of land. The other parts of the land that are not so easily inhabitable are the mountains, like the Himalayas, and then you also have the deserts, like the Gobi Desert. So with those two features, the mountains and deserts, ancient China was pretty isolated from other civilizations. They tended to think of themselves as most sophisticated and everybody else outside of China as barbarians. All right, looking at social structure, agriculture was the key to Chinese society. Peasant farmers were the most valued, of course, below the nobles, but a lot of civilizations we're going to study this year actually have the merchants as higher because of their wealth, and the peasants at the bottom next to the slaves. But because farming was so important, peasants were valued and seen by the government as super important. Family values in China also surrounded agriculture, and therefore family was the basic economic and social unit in China. The more kids you had, the better, because you had more workers, and the kids were supposed to respect their elders. Because elders have existed on the earth longer than the kids, you could see why that would be important. They would have wisdom. China, like many civilizations, was a patriarchy, so males were supreme. Children obeyed their parents, men worked and were like the breadwinners, women raised children in the home. The exception to the rule was that royal family women could influence politics. They could also have positions of power sometimes. Religion is important in ancient China, but it's not as laid out as some other civilizations like the Hebrews or the in ancient India or ancient Egypt. The gods in ancient China were a little more ambiguous. The Chinese believed in supernatural forces that could help rulers in their affairs. So, for example, the king would ask the gods to be victorious in battle. And if he wanted an answer on that question, he could have an oracle bone, which was the bone of an animal that had a written question on it. And then the priest would throw it in the fire, and when the bones would crack, the priest would interpret the shapes of the cracks as heavens responding to the question. Chinese also believed in the spirit of their ancestors, that their ancestors could bring good or bad fortune to family members. There is a link here to a great clip in Mulan where Mushu and Mulan's other ancestors are kind of arguing about who's going to be sent to go and help Mulan in her quest. So we watch that in class, but for the sake of time, I'm going to skip through that. Okay, Chinese philosophy. Okay, it's important to know that Eastern civilizations like China think very differently than Western civilizations. This is important to understand because as people growing up in the West, Americans, we're kind of taught to believe that we're unique, we're special, we're individuals, we should have freedoms that protect our individual rights. But in Eastern societies, it's way more important to think of yourselves as like a cog in a bigger machine, meaning that your family, your community is way more important than just you yourself. You are part of something greater. Your actions will always impact your family and community. So knowing that, we're going to step into talking about Chinese philosophy. How do we create a stable society and maintain order? These are sometimes called schools of thought. Okay, the battle of philosophies, Confucius versus Han Feizi. Okay, human nature, according to Confucius, who was a very popular, probably the most popular philosopher ever in China, he believed that good government will promote social harmony. So if the king is nice, the people will in return be nice. However, Han Feizi believed that human nature is wicked and therefore harsh punishments are needed to keep order in society. So you can see his kind of like furrowed brow suggests that he's, not gonna let anybody walk all over him. He's very much a law and order kind of guy, whereas Confucius is a little more open. He sees humanity as a good thing. So looking at some primary sources from these two, we're gonna dive into those today. Confucius was a teacher that kind of traveled around China. He believes in these 5 constant relationships: the relationship between the parent and the child, husband and wife. This one's kind of interesting. The older sibling and younger sibling. Older siblings should be kind to their younger siblings, but the younger sibling would need to obey the older sibling, which is kind of like, whoa, if you're a younger sibling. Same thing with friends. If you've got older friends, you got to obey them and be considerate. Ruler and subjects. Okay, rulers should be kind and subjects should be loyal. Okay, it's not often in civilization that rulers are ruling with kindness, but Confucius really suggests that that's the way to keep society intact. Okay, we looked at some primary sources. We looked at Confucius's beliefs about like the main values that he had: culture, conduct, loyalty, trustworthiness. So he's all about being a good person. So we examined that. He's more of an egalitarian. He believes that people deserve equality. Not that everyone should be equal, but he says that we shouldn't just be elitists and only have the wealthy be the best. Okay, Han Fai-Tse. Now he's the main person of interest today. So he was an ancient philosopher. He's the founder of legalism. Now this is a term you'll need to know for China and its government, but he believed that you have to punish people in order to get them to obey. So later he was a politician, and then unfortunately for him, he was captured by the state and forced to drink a poison. So he made somebody mad, and they executed him. So in your primary source assignment, okay, we'll go over the first two together, and then you will have to pick one yourself and then answer the reflection questions. So you don't have to do the entire assignment, so listen closely for what parts you need to do. All right, so this first one on getting kids to obey authority. So it says, now here is a young man of bad character. His parents rail at him, but he does not reform. The neighbors scold, but he is unmoved. His teachers instruct him, but he refuses to change his ways. Thus, although 3 fine influences are brought to bear on him, the love of his parents, the effort of his neighbors, the wisdom of his teachers, yet he remains unmoved and refuses to change so much as the hair on his shin. But let the district magistrate send out the government soldiers to enforce the law and search for evildoers. Then he is filled with terror, reforms his conduct, and changes his ways. Thus, the love of parents is not good enough to make children learn what is right, but it must be backed up by strict penalties of the local officials. For people by nature grow proud of love, but they listen to authority. All right, so in your 4-Varman assignment, the primary source assignment, you're going to write in, what is the problem with the young teen? What's his problem? Okay, go back and read. Who tried to help reform him? What was the final solution to get him to behave? And what is the moral of the story? Okay, ooh, there's the bell. So fill that in. All right, so what is Han Fai-Tse trying to say? What's the moral of the story here? Okay. People need strict punishments, according to Han Fai-Tse. Children, notice this last line. The love of parents is not enough to make children learn what is right. Can't be kind and soft. You need strict penalties. Ooh, even of the local officials for people to listen to authority. So imagine like someone's misbehaving at your household and your parents call the National Guard. They knock on the door and now they're going to give it to you. They're going to scare you, maybe, I don't know, point a gun at you, something terrifying. And that's when you're going to behave. That's what he's trying to say. You have to scare people, fill them with terror, right, in order to behave. And then think to yourself, do you agree with that? Is that how we get people to comply? Is that a society you want to be a part of, right? According to Han Fai-Tse, that's how you're going to get people to listen. Okay, we'll do one more together. Passage 2, a critique of Confucius's filial piety. Now, this is also kind of a secondary critique because he's talking about a man from Lu, and that's Confucius's hometown. So there was a man of Lu who accompanied his sovereign to war. 3 times he went into battle, and 3 times he ran away. Ooh, he's a deserter. When Confucius asked him the reason, he replied, I have an aged father, and if I should die, there would be no one to take care of him. Confucius, considering the man filial, respecting his parents, recommended him and had him promoted to a post in the government. Remember, this is a guy who ran away. Thus we see that a man who is filial son to his father may be a traitorous, subject to his lord. So try to summarize that. So think about some of the key parts. A man goes into battle and he runs away. That's usually a huge problem if you're in the army. You can't have people deserting, and there's often horrible punishments, awful punishments if you do that. But instead, Confucius promotes him for being kind to his dad, right? He's worried about his dad. So Han Fight C is recommending, right, that this is a traitorous subject. Maybe we do something else. Maybe we don't promote the guy who deserted his army. Maybe we give him something else, punishment. All right, now we've done these two together. Hopefully you filled those out on your primary source assignment, 5 Varmin. Now you get to pick either passage 3, passage 4, or passage 5 to complete. Then answer the reflection questions. Okay, you don't have to answer the last one. This is a story I told in class about this. It's a weird story. Somebody was following me, and we were trying to decide what to do. So fill those out and then submit that to Schoology. Later on this week, you will watch part 2 of the lecture. All right. Have a wonderful day, guys. Let me know if you have questions.